Hello everybody! If you want all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 853, The Envelope in Drawer 7, Upper Intermediate. Every Thursday morning, Daniel Pike unlocked Drawer 7 at the Council Archive office and checked the contents inside. Most of the drawers contained old planning papers, birth records, and forgotten reports from decades earlier. Drawer 7 held something different. An envelope. It was plain brown, slightly bent at the corners, and had no stamp or address. On the front, written in black ink, were 4 words: "For whoever opens this." Daniel had worked in the basement archive for nearly 11 years. The room smelled of dust, cardboard, and old paper. Nothing surprising ever happened there. That was exactly why he liked the job. But the envelope bothered him. It had appeared 6 months earlier without explanation. None of the staff admitted placing it there. His manager, Elaine, had laughed when Daniel mentioned it. "Probably some forgotten office joke," she had said while signing documents at her desk upstairs. "Leave it alone." Daniel tried to ignore it, yet every Thursday when he unlocked Drawer 7, he felt the same curiosity pulling at him. One rainy afternoon in November, the office became unusually quiet. The heating system had failed again, and several employees went home early. By 4 o'clock, Daniel was alone underground with only the soft hum of fluorescent lights above him. He stared at the envelope. Then, before he could change his mind, he picked it up and opened it carefully. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The message was handwritten. "If you are reading this, I need your help. Meet me at the old ferry terminal tomorrow at 8:15 p.m. Come alone, do not tell anyone." There was no signature. Daniel read the message 3 times. His first thought was that someone from the office was playing a ridiculous prank. His second thought was far less comfortable. What if it was not a prank? That night he slept badly. Wind rattled the windows of his small flat, and every strange sound woke him. By morning he had almost decided not to go. Almost. The old ferry terminal stood near the river on the far side of the city. It had closed years earlier after newer transport routes replaced it. Now the building sat empty beside dark water and rusting metal fences. At 8:10 p.m, Daniel arrived. Rain dripped from the edge of the roof as he stepped inside the abandoned waiting area. The electronic timetable on the wall was cracked and dead. Empty benches stretched across the room. No one was there. Daniel checked his phone. No signal. "Excellent," he muttered. He waited. At exactly 8:15, footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the ticket barriers. A woman appeared from the shadows. She was perhaps in her late 50s, wearing a dark coat and carrying a leather bag. Her grey hair was tied back tightly, and her eyes examined Daniel with immediate caution. "You came," she said quietly. Daniel folded his arms. "Who are you?" "My name is Miriam Vale." "I found your note." "Yes." Daniel shook his head impatiently. "Why all this mystery? Why leave it in my office?" Miriam glanced toward the windows before answering. "Because your archive office keeps records that somebody once hidden." Daniel laughed nervously. "I file parking reports and housing documents." "Not all of the time." She opened her leather bag and removed a photograph. It showed a large industrial building beside the river. Smoke poured from tall chimneys overhead. "Do you recognize it?" she asked. Daniel studied the image. "No." "You will. The building stood where Riverside Apartments now stand." Daniel frowned. The apartment complex was one of the biggest residential developments in the city. Miriam continued speaking. 30 years ago, chemicals leaked from that factory into the river. Several workers became seriously ill. Local officials covered it up to avoid panic and financial disaster. Daniel stared at her. What does this have to do with me? The evidence disappeared into the council archive. Daniel felt irritation rising. You expect me to believe there is some secret conspiracy hidden in filing cabinets? Miriam did not react. My husband worked at the factory, she said calmly. He died 4 years later. The room became silent except for the rain outside. Daniel looked again at the photograph. Suddenly the situation no longer felt amusing. What evidence? He asked carefully. Miriam reached into her bag once more and handed him a small piece of paper. On it was written, Basement Storage, Self C4, Box 1182. Daniel recognized the system immediately. It was one of the oldest archive sections, rarely visited by staff. I searched years ago, Miriam said. The files had already vanished, but last week I learned they may have been moved back into storage. Daniel hesitated. If this is true, why not contact the police? Because one of the officials involved became deputy mayor. Daniel felt a cold heaviness settle in his stomach. He should walk away, he thought. Go home, forget the entire thing. Instead, he heard himself saying, The building is locked after 6. Miriam nodded once. I know. At 10:40 p.m, Daniel unlocked the archive office again. The basement looked even stranger at night. Long rows of shelves stretched beneath harsh white lights, while pipes rattled overhead. Miriam followed closely behind him without speaking. Daniel found shelf C4 near the back wall. Box 1182 sat exactly where it should. He pulled it down carefully. Inside were dozens of folders tied with fading string. Miriam opened the first file with shaking hands. Medical reports, internal letters, chemical inspection records. Then Daniel saw a page stamped with the words, Confidential, do not release. His mouth became dry. This is real, he whispered. Miriam nodded slowly. For several minutes neither of them spoke. Then footsteps sounded somewhere near the main entrance. Daniel froze. Another sound followed. Voices. Miriam closed the file immediately. Someone is here, she whispered. The archive office should have been empty. Daniel switched off the nearby light. Darkness covered the shelves around them. The footsteps grew louder. The torch beam moved slowly through the aisles. Daniel could hear his own breathing. A man spoke somewhere nearby. Check the back section. Another voice answered, They cannot have gone far. Miriam gripped Daniel's arm tightly. The torchlight moved closer. Daniel noticed a narrow maintenance door behind the shelving units. Without speaking, he guided Miriam toward it. The door opened into a cramped service corridor filled with old pipes. They moved quietly through the darkness until they reached a metal staircase leading upward. Finally, after what felt like hours, they emerged into cold night air behind the building. Miriam leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. They know, she said. Daniel looked back at the archive building. Who were they? I don't know exactly, but now they know somebody found the files. Daniel stared down at the box still clutched under his arm. His ordinary life had vanished in less than 2 hours. What happens next? He asked. Miriam looked directly at him. Now we make sure the truth survives. 3 weeks later, the story appeared across national newspapers. Hidden chemical reports, falsified safety inspections, and decades of corruption shocked the public. Several former officials faced criminal investigation, including the deputy mayor, who resigned immediately. Daniel watched the television coverage from his flat in disbelief. His name never appeared publicly, neither did Miriam's. That was intentional. One evening, Daniel returned to the archive office after work. Everything looked exactly as it always had. Shelves, boxes, dust, silence. He walked slowly to drawer 7 and opened it. Inside was another envelope. Daniel stared at it for a long moment. Then he smiled, closed the drawer, and walked away without opening it. If you learned a new word today, please make sure to subscribe so you can practice again next time. Vocabulary notes. Curiosity, meaning a strong desire to know or learn something. Example, yet every Thursday when he unlocked drawer 7, he felt the same curiosity pulling at him. In this sentence, Daniel's curiosity makes him continue thinking about the mysterious envelope, even though he tries to ignore it. Similar words: interest, fascination, eagerness, wonder. Extra example: the child's curiosity led her to explore every room in the museum carefully. Abandoned, meaning left behind or no longer used. Example: the old ferry terminal stood near the river on the far side of the city. Later, the story explains that the terminal was abandoned after newer transport routes replaced it. This word often describes buildings, vehicles, or places that people no longer use. Similar words: deserted, empty, neglected, unused. Extra example: they discovered an abandoned cinema at the edge of town. Corruption, meaning dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by people in positions of power. Example: hidden chemical reports, falsified safety inspections, and decades of corruption shocked the public. Here, corruption refers to officials hiding dangerous information for their own benefit. Similar words: dishonesty, fraud, bribery, misconduct. Extra example: the investigation uncovered corruption inside the organization. Hesitate, meaning to pause before doing or saying something because you are uncertain or nervous. Example: Daniel hesitated. Daniel pauses because he is unsure whether he should continue helping Miriam. Similar words: pause, doubt, waver, delay. Extra example: she hesitated before accepting the job offer in another country. Rattled, meaning made a series of short, hard sounds. It can also describe someone feeling nervous or shaken. Example: wind rattled the windows of his small flat, and every strange sound woke him. The word creates a strong atmosphere by describing the noisy windows during the stormy night. Similar words: shook, trembled, clattered, disturbed. Extra example: the sudden explosion rattled everyone in the office. Story written by ChatGPT. Image created by ChatGPT. To read, see all the story's content in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. CC Music, Drifting at 432 Hz, Unicorn Heads.